Okay. Hey everybody, it's Kara hollering at ya. It is, I don't know what episode it is, to be honest. I think we're like in the 50s now. So let's get it's moving by really quickly. So I have another one of my friends from the Tony Robbins community. We've crewed together and that's how Kevin and I got connected. So welcome, Kevin Crenshaw. So you go by the Heart Guy. And so really the way that I structure this is just you kind of give us the lowdown on what you're doing. I've looked at your website and there's to say that I'm not moved and almost to tears by the About Us page would be an understatement. It's like deep in my heart, I feel everything that you say on your website. So I just want you to share it with everybody so that they can hear it. But it's some heavy stuff in there and some beautiful stuff. And yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to where you're at, and then we'll dig in from there.
Awesome. I'll give you the short version.
Whatever version you want to give us is good.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned I'm the Heart Guy, and I go by the Heart Guy because I'm just very passionate about everything that I do, and so that kind of nickname stuck with me. And then I really recognized, like, oh shit, like I'm basically working on people's hearts, like healing from heartbreak and breakups, and helping people heal codependency. And I was like, this just works. And so the branding side of me was like, yes, just kind of geeking out about that because I'm also an artist. So, even right before recording this, I was working on some new stuff, and I love the creative design aspect of things and making it all click and making it on brand. And so that's just what works well for me. And it's kind of been rolling with it. Haven't had any objections, so that's good.
I love it. I think it's amazing.
But yeah, I for the longest time, it was, like I said, healing codependency and healing from breakup. And I still do that. And it's kind of in this season right now where I'm expanding to a lot of other things, and kind of being more of a spiritual guide. And my journey got started, like I was a kid that got picked on in school, super shy, nerdy. But even before that, I just had a big heart and wanted everybody to be happy. Like I was like a freaking angel as a kid. And around middle school, bullying picked up and all that stuff. And I was still like really into video games. That was my escape, right? And I grew up in a very abundant childhood, but not really emotionally. There was some stuff that it was not emotional safety and stuff. So my escape from my reality was video games, and I just poured everything that I had into that and art. And so I also got really good at art. Like I was going to go to to design video games when I went to college. And finally, I just, like, enough was enough. I recognized some of my friends were even starting to pick on me, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I just snapped. And that's when I started fitness and changed my life. My reputation changed. People that were picking on me started asking for advice. I started getting a girlfriend. Like, that changed a lot for me. And so that's when I went all in on fitness, because I got a sense of giving back, but also I got attention. And so I became like the #1 sought after group fitness instructor in the area, and like went all in on the fitness stuff. And in that time, my first girlfriend, we were dated for 4 years, and then I proposed, and then she called it off, and I was suicidal that night, almost killed myself. And right after that, one of my mentors at the time, he gave me a book called Wild at Heart that talks about masculine energy. And it was the first book I ever read about masculine and feminine energy. And that I devoured it cover to cover. And I'm the guy that always read Spark Notes. Okay. I didn't read books. And that changed so much for me. And I was actually able to like let go of the expectations, the relationship, and actually start like working on myself. And then the 2 relationships after her cheated on me. And that's when I was like, okay, there's something's here. The last one ended. She slammed the door in my face, kicked me out. You don't know what the fuck love is. Just drove a knife into my heart. So that's all I thought that I was doing. And she was right to some extent. And I was kind of living a fantasy, and I wasn't connected to reality, and I didn't love this guy. And so it was kind of, I was very codependent and didn't recognize what that was even. But then that's when I started working on myself and kind of doing some of this work at the same time. My fitness business is blowing up, and I'm like, super shredded, winning these competitions, teaching 24 group fitness classes a week, like doing all this stuff, and kicking ass, taking names. and there was still kind of like a void in me. So I was chasing the fitness and the physique and that like attention, but there was still like this, I could never chill, you know?
Right.
And even relationships after that, like there was still like this thing missing. And finally it got to a point where my grandfather passed away and he gave me a huge inheritance. And I finally, for the first time, like didn't have to work because I was homeless and shit, living out of my car before.
Yeah, I read that.
I went through seasons, right? I'm kind of speeding you guys up through things. And so I was like, fuck, I don't have to show up and live in the gym and like work there. Screw this. And so I just like sold all my stuff and traveled the world. And while it looked like I was blowing the money, what I really was doing was finding my passion and finding myself, which was the best gift that he could have ever given me. So I'm so internally grateful, because in that is when I birthed the heart guy and really figured out like, what do I really want to do? And I'm like, I just love, like, I have this saying in fitness that was like, put some heart into it. And I would like scream it at the top of like a, intense version of the fitness class. And I was like, that just stuck with me. And I was like, maybe like heart-centric life coaching or something like that. Started a podcast. Then episode 4 talked about masculine and feminine energy. Got bombarded with questions. It's like, cool, I'm a dating coach. Did that for a bit. Did relationship coaching for a bit. Recognized, dude, you're out of integrity. You're not even in a fucking relationship. So I shifted it more to like self-love, inner healing, and which deepened like the healing codependency and everything like that. And then ironically was I was changing that for myself. Hundreds of people are going through my courses. Like it's working. Like things are actually happening. And that's the first time entrepreneurially that I started seeing a spark. Because I had done things before, but it was more, I think, looking back, like Kevin just creating and having fun. But this actually worked, and people were getting amazing results and completely changing their lives. And so I stuck with it for a while, and I had a tour in 2019 where I traveled around 4 cities back-to-back weekends doing live events, and that was amazing, absolutely life-changing. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. We had like anywhere between, I think it was 30 to 70 people per city, which was dope for my first time doing anything.
Yeah, no kidding. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was fucking awesome. And then I got back to LA, which is where I was living at the time, to an eviction notice on my door, $7,000 I quit in 3 days. A friend kind of had a falling out with him because of some money that I owed, and my business coach threatening to sue me because I didn't have payment for some stuff. So all of that in one day, I was like, what in the actual fuck? And I went out to the beach and just bawling my eyes out, screaming, yelling at God, like, first off, how the fuck did I get here? And I added it up, and I was $150,000 in debt, basically overnight. And long story short, I was, again, kind of like showing up for everybody else, but I wasn't even looking after my own financial well-being. So the codependency kind of shifted, and that was a moment where I just fully surrendered. And I said, I've got to start living with some backbone and some integrity here. And this is what I did. I paid off the debt. I like cleared out all that stuff, and really just anchoring into alignment with my truth. And not doing something because I think that's what's supposed to be done. I was doing a lot of things almost, and this is just from self-reflection, almost like I needed to be doing things in order to feel enough, or to get attention. At a very subconscious level, right? And I finally just sat with myself, and it took me down a really dark path. I got into a really bad suicidal depression in the end of 2019, and was able to pull myself out of that, and like had a near death experience. It was fucking wild. And from everything, and now coming into 2020, like I feel like so free because I went through those experiences. And that's why, kind of like I was telling you, like my work is evolving to being more like spiritual guidance, because going through all the shit that I went through with holding a loaded pistol in my mouth and almost overdosing, having like an extreme addiction to caffeine, being codependent, like sleeping in my car, homeless for 6 months, like all the stuff that I've been through, is the greatest gifts I could have ever been given. And if you like shift around and see it like that, I found myself. I'm free emotionally. I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks anymore, right? And I'm showing up for me, and you could say self-love. I just say it's integrity, and I respect myself. And so kind of guiding people through the dark night of the soul, or you could say like, shadow work for lack of better terms,
Yep.
is kind of where it's heading. And that's something that I'm passionate about, because so many people, when you get to those dark points, it's like a make or break thing. And if
Right.
you don't have the right guidance or tools to navigate it, like it'll take you out. And I was so blessed to have found Tony Robbins so young. And so I knew some of those like tools, right?
Right.
And the community, even, that was a big saving grace for me, of number one, pulling myself out of it. But I think to the point where I'm at now, like keeping myself out of it, where I don't have to keep dipping down into it again, So, yeah, that's that, and then we're here.
Just give me a second. Here's the beauty of all of this. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for the transparency, because I think that's the biggest piece that we miss in all of this, is like, we fake all this shit. And especially I think when you're in a community like we are in, where there's literally thousands of people who've either gone to events, crewed events, platinum partners, friends of Tony's, whatever. I think some of the biggest problem is that we feel like we should have it all figured out all the fucking time. And we don't. Like, I haven't seen you in a while. And like, since I think we crewed it was last 2019. And I would have said, what the fuck? What? You felt you were suicidal? Like, I would never in a million years have guessed that about you.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of owning the feminine energy and the masculine energy, is the ability to come out and say, this is fucked up. I'm not okay.
Well, the
And
surrender, I was trying to
yeah,
control every aspect of my life. It was hyper
that's it.
imbalanced. I'll say too, like, you know, having there's this gap. And let me back up. There's this movement with personal development industry, and wanting to better yourself, and all these self-help books that have been coming out. And I really started, I think, in the like 70s, where they did some studies around people. Obviously, if they love themselves and they view themselves positively, then they perform better. So to create better performers or workers, they kind of made this push in schools and everywhere to kind of like, everybody can be great, better
Mm-hmm.
yourself, like, and almost this striving, achieving mentality that kind of sped up the psyche of the culture. And when you're looking at what that does on a spiritual level, it creates a massive gap.
Yep.
Because I have to do my breath work and my affirmations and my morning routine and my things, and get the money and get the successful business so that I can be enough. And it has this very unheard undercurrent of I'm not enough. And it comes
Yep.
from a root of I'm not enough. Even just striving to do a thing creates that gap. And so that's something that I learned, because the harder that I pushed, the more I worked, the more that I obsessed about it, the striving created the emotional gap where I didn't love me, and it created the nightmare in my head and around, in which ultimately manifested it in my life.
Yep.
So it's kind of like it's this harmonization between, I don't want to use the word contentment, but just you're happy and you love life. And the energy that I have now is, yeah, I love where I'm at. This is fucking amazing. Yeah, I want that thing. I'm just going to start walking in that direction. It's
Right.
not like, oh my God, I have to have this thing or I'm going to die.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
you know what I mean? And I've actually been able to make things happen faster.
That's it.
I say it's a co-creation with the universe. God, love, the universe is definitely gifts that energy, and things are so easy. I just created a nonprofit that's about ending domestic violence, like quite literally in this generation or my lifetime or future, it's going to happen. And the amount of ease, I haven't even like tried to do anything. I just was like, yeah, this is going to be a thing. I put out some posts. The perfect people for a board of directors just came in, like just found me out of nowhere. Didn't know them a month ago. And now they're on the board of directors. We're making this thing happen. We just launched fundraising. Like, we're already helping people. It's insane.
Yep. And I think too, the other thing I want to jump in on, because a lot of it's women that listen to the show mostly. We have this idea as women where we have to have that. So the hunter mode, right? Like I got to have the stuff. I got to do the stuff. I gotta. And in that process, and that's happened since the late 70s, early 80s too, where we just sort of decided we were conditioned, whatever, that it was one or the other. We had to be more in our masculine and get all the fucking shit and not be in our feminine, or the other way around. And if you were the other, there was no gray. Like what I'm learning at 44 is that my entire life from about 10 years old until about 43 was in my masculine, and not understanding, even understanding for a second, the relationship between feminine energy and masculine. And so it's toxic for guys and it's as toxic for us, because you guys are in full hunter mode, toxic masculinity, get the girls, bang all the girls you can, get the car, all that shit. We're doing it too. We just do it with a fucking bow on it and it doesn't look the same, but we're still doing it. And so by us, like then, and when you're saying about your soul, I, for the first time, truly, Kevin, I feel in my soul, I'm doing exactly what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing right now.
And that's a beautiful feeling.
It is. And it's, the scary thing is how many people are still chasing it because nobody's stopped them and given them a little shake and said, listen, you're not inside your heart right now. Like for me, I say it all the time. I really sincerely believe this is how we're going to save the world, is teaching people how to get into their hearts. Because in your heart, you're not fucking putting your knee on a man's neck. In your heart, you're not flying an airplane into a fucking building. In your heart, you're not beating the shit out of your wife. Like it goes, etc. Right? And so I love that, because you're much younger than I am. And I think this is key, is that you're teaching that generation about heart work. And it is hard work, but it's heart work. So talk a little bit, you kind of talked a bit about your childhood. You had an abundant, like abundance in your life. You said you didn't have emotional abundance, however. Talk a little bit about the relationship maybe with mom and dad, and like, was there one more masculine energy in the household than the other, and sort of where you may have picked up some, maybe some of the ways you were conditioned as a young boy till now.
I think that I was definitely in a bubble. You asked about parents, but even school, I was in a bubble. Looking back, I was in evangelical Christian school. So,
I went to a Catholic school, so I feel.
Yeah, so I didn't even recognize that I was in a bubble, right? That wasn't the world or the way the world operated. And then when I was home, my dad was never emotionally there for me because he was always working. Even if he was home, he was working, and he ran a very successful business. So that's why, and I, held it against him in my early years because I didn't understand. But now I'm so grateful because that was his way of showing love, right? Providing. Mm-hmm. And so my mom was always around, but I learned a lot about life through video games, which I think can be why I went towards a fantasy land. Mm-hmm. And the community of video games, I should say, not the video games themselves. So I learned from other kids and what their parents were like, and I'll just go over to other people's houses, and that was my experience of life, because my experience at home was I just got whatever I wanted. I was right. I was a spoiled brat, literally. And then middle of high school, my dad's business got stolen from him, and a bunch of other stuff happened. And basically it was a switch overnight. I was I got anything that I wanted, and the world was my oyster, to I gotta help pay the bills, and I really have to help out here. And then we lost the house 2 years later, and so I had to go out on my own, which kind of, I didn't know anything about money, so, right. Or how to earn it, right? And so that was very shocking. It was not until honestly very recently that I've actually been able to dive into all that. But in terms of a masculine and feminine energy thing, I would say I'm an artist, so I'm more so feminine, but I over masculinated myself to put that mask on, right? Because that's what I thought I had to be. And I'm so glad, because I built insane discipline and focus, which helps a lot. And so I feel like I initiated myself as a man when I was sleeping in my car. When I left Memphis, where I'm from, and went to Dallas and was basically homeless, and then worked my way up to get an apartment, to get things, that I really, looking back, was my own initiation for me as a man. That's okay, I'm self-reliant. My parents didn't pay a single bill, and help me out, didn't give me a dime. I did this shit. That for me was a huge initiation. And then in 2019, I feel, is when my feminine got initiated, where I just fucking surrendered, and I was being here in the now, and grounding, and just presence right? Of not trying to control everything. That was my break when with all the money and stuff. That really what kickstarted that initiation. And so now, it's at the point where I really do have this inner balance. Like the feminine in me is not a mindset, if that makes sense.
Yep.
It's not up in my head. It's a place I can go.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, and the ability to pivot between those and on call really,
Right.
is very, like, it's can't put a price tag on it, right? And
Yep.
that helps me out so much. That's why I can be an entrepreneur and make a ton of shit happen, and I can be super creative and present and expressive, right?
Right.
And create all these things. And you mentioned like women are the hunters and still too, and kind of like doing that thing. Um, the biggest misconception with feminine energy is that it's weak or that it's passive.
I know.
It's stronger than masculine. So when you're in your feminine energy, things will happen for you and be given to you. It's not, you don't even need to be hunting. You don't even be doing. And
That's
I've been
it.
experiencing that in my life when I'm so just in alignment and in my feminine, in like in like the best way possible, right? For me as a guy, not like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But
I feel you. I got you.
I'm just creating and having fun, and all of this shit is happening so easy.
Yep.
I have if we want to talk archetypes for a second, I have an overdeveloped warrior.
Okay.
The warrior is, you're gonna get shit done. You're disciplined. The magician, in terms of masculine archetypes, is more closely related to the feminine.
Yep.
And the magician is like the artist, but he just manifests. Shit just happens around him.
Yep.
And that's kind of like an evolved level of manifestation versus the, breakthrough, make it happen, which is needed sometimes. It's needed to make a change. I went through that, right? Even in my spiritual journey, I like snapped myself out of it when I was like suicidal last year. I had to have that energy to bring me up, but I didn't live in that energy.
Right.
That's very key, because before I lived in that energy, and I was, I drove my body into the ground.
And I think like, so women who are listening, and I like that you brought up that it's not weakness. Like I'm way more, so I went to Date with Destiny in December, and I had a much different, that was my first one. And it was a very, if you've not ever been to a Tony Robbins event, Date with Destiny, I would call the university to the Unleash the Power Within, which is more like kindergarten.
Yep.
And when I started this podcast a year ago around this topic because I was having trouble meeting guys. I'm back with my husband now since Date with Destiny, incidentally, but it's like in that moment, I was always in hunter mode. I was always showing up with like this masculine energy, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't getting the type of man or the type of man I was calling the universe for. And that was it. And so, and I always like to clarify to women, it's not that I'm saying that you can only be in your feminine. Like I'm getting so much done. Like hunter mode, mature masculinity is the piece that you need in order to execute all the beautiful things you just discovered in your feminine energy. And so when I need to discover and I'm in creation mode, that's an all feminine energy. That's when things are in alignment. That's when people will call or reach out. But then when I need to build, build my course or build this podcast, then you still need to be able to pivot back into that masculine area. So one thing I want to talk about kind of that I always find really fascinating is the friend circle. And I know I'm going off a little bit, but as I develop, my friendships change and evolve, or they don't. Some stay, some go, whatever. And I always tell, like, I have 4 children, and you met Sydney. She's my 23-year-old. I always say, you're the product of the 5 people you spend most time with. So as you started to evolve into this, did you see, like, when you're seeing your guy friends, your from the past, not people from Tony, when you see those men, are they still in toxic masculinity? Do you ever have that moment where you're like, holy, I could really help this friend and explain to him what he's doing, but I'm not going to? Or you do, like, how do you handle that piece of your life where you're really seeing the toxicity in your friends, if you are at all?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't label it toxicity. I would label it as ignorance.
Well, yeah.
But it's just where they're at in their journey. and I'm
Mhm.
able to see that and bless them with it, and to move on. A lot like my early childhood friends, we kind of had a huge falling out because they were basically still making fun of me, and I just said, "Look, I'm out."
Mm.
Um, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. And then I started getting, and then my next group of friends was really the Tony Robbins community, and then the gym.
Right.
uh, and that was a little bit better. But even now, my circle of friends, I have three. That's it, and I don't feel lonely at all.
I know, it's crazy.
Just, I'm just very, I very much limit my time, and that's with who I spend time with. And I spend a lot of time by myself. I travel the world by myself, so um, it makes me happy, and I don't need to be so connected to get
Right.
validation from, you know what I mean? I
Yep.
I'm just I want to be around dope people, and I feel like I'm in this mode of expansion because I've met quite a few people over this past week, and I'm like, fuck yes, like, that's the person that I want to be friends with. So I think that's life, and that's always going to happen. But I think I even remember somebody had mentioned, one of my friends had mentioned that Tony even said like he has like two friends,
Right.
like him and Sage have like two people that they really, are really close with. That's it. And it's
Mary
like,
B would be one of them. I don't know who the other one would be.
oh really? Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
she's the cutest. Like, oh my gosh, she's adorable. Like every
But
time
yeah,
she's on
it's not.
camera.
It's like it's just it it's just the way it is. I feel, and so in terms, I don't try to change people. People, I'm even if somebody comes to me and asks for advice, they have to be
Right.
ready. Some people just
Yeah.
want to complain, and
Most people want to complain
I'm very blunt, and my
too.
coaching style is tough love. So if somebody's coming to me and they're saying they want to change and they're not, I'm just going to call them out on it. Hey, you want to do this or not? And if it triggers them and they leave, cool. Like,
Right.
you're ready for the work. People
Yeah.
come to me ready to actually make a shift, and
I always
it's
say that like people will leave your life organically, and that's a beautiful thing, and
totally.
that's
It wasn't
something
like a
that
thing that I had to do. You know?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it can, and I think a lot of times people tend to get a little bit weary of the beginning of the journey, right? Because you always hear like, oh, if I change, this person's going to leave my life. But the thing that people don't know because they're just in the beginning of it is ultimately you just, like I said, you organically don't fit anymore. And then it's just a beautiful, okay. And sometimes it's not so beautiful. Sometimes it's a bit dramatic, but you just kind of like when you're in flow, it's not a thing anymore. It's not like, oh my God, this person left. It's, I'm in flow and I feel good about this. And if they leave because they're not okay, then they leave. It's all good.
And on that, you mentioned in flow, which is feminine, and that's creative energy, right? And so a lot of this year has been me reconnecting with my artist. I've mentioned before, I was going to go
Hmm.
to school to play video games, and I shut that part of me down and just
Mm.
pursued fitness. Didn't touch a freaking notebook, like a journal or a sketchbook for years. And then one of my exes actually bought me one, and then I kind of doodled around a little bit here and there, but I finally like am reclaiming that side of myself that just wants to create,
Yeah.
and I'm doing it more often now, and I'm in the flow.
Right.
um, and so that's a big thing. If people want to figure out like, how do I get in the flow, well, you got to get out of your head and in your heart, and it's easier said than done, but literally just start creating something.
Yep.
um,
Writing, drawing, whatever.
that's the best way, because when you can just get lost in time because you're creating, that's the best feeling.
And I
And
always
so
say to the women, especially because it's more. I think it's probably more innate in women to dance, and I'm always talking about dancing. Like that was I was dancing at 4 years old all the way through, and but when it's not a choreographed dance, it's just moving your body or getting in your body, like even yoga, getting into your body and creating some sort of movement is a really surefire way I feel to get into your body. So let's talk a bit about like the dating scene and the dating and how you approach dating now. I mean, we talk about business a lot, but I like to talk about this stuff because this is important to you. So how have you shifted now to meet somebody different than you've done in the past? Like what are some of the ways that you can not quantify,
so
but yeah.
yeah, the past 2 years I've consciously been emotionally unavailable
Okay.
and shut down every opportunity, not looking for a relationship. Sure, I'd want one and definitely was tempted here and there, but no, I'm working on me. And I'm so fucking glad that I did. Because if I was in a relationship during all my 2019, it wouldn't have lasted. I didn't want anybody drugged through that, right? So I felt, I should say, in the beginning of 2020, hey, I'm finally in a space to do this. Like, yeah, and I think this is huge for the ladies listening. I made the decision that I was ready for a relationship. And a lot of guys need to get to that point.
Mm,
That they need to internally be ready. And it's not something any woman does. It's just kind of where is he at in his quest, in his life, in his journey, because there's stages of masculine development. And I finally hit that stage where I was like, I finally love me. Like, I'm a freaking love bug. I talk about love all day, right? But for myself, I was finally like, I have space for this. I've done a lot of fucking work on myself. And yeah, I think I'm willing, not ready, because ready's a lie. I'm willing.
right.
And so even just making that internal shift, I don't go out of my way.
Mm,
Um, I see myself as a very magnetic, charismatic person. So that means that I hold the belief that things are going to happen and fall into my space. I don't need to go down and hunt.
right.
And it's been happening, right? Like I've had casual conversations with beautiful women, like connecting online and stuff. It's surreal how it's happening, but I don't have to go out and do it.
Right. Yeah, it feels like for you it's more like a magnet, exactly. Like it's pulling to
Yeah.
you
And I've
instead of
always,
you going to pull it to you. It's just naturally coming to you now.
right. And for all the ladies out there, it's the opportunity presents itself. And then, yes, I will pursue or chase or whatever you want to say. But it's not like, I'm like, oh my God, where is she? Okay, I'm ready for a relationship. Like, I gotta go on all these dating apps to find the one. Like, no, that's
Right.
not that. Because then that's coming still from a place of lack. That striving creates the gap. That,
Desperation,
oh,
right? Like that's what it
I'm
feels
just
like.
like, okay, universe, I'm ready for this to happen now. Let me keep working on myself, obviously, but I feel willing for this now. And even just that internal shift of being willing, like I said, I've gone on a few dates, like I've talked to tons of amazing women, and it's fun.
So,
For 2 years, I was celibate and I didn't date anybody.
wow. That's hard to do, and I know quite a few men that have attempted that, and it ends up some fail, some succeed, but you need that balance you need the guidance, like the internal guidance, I feel like, to sort of reset and figure out, because women, we always think it's us, like, oh, I got to figure out what I want, and we're all, whatever, but it goes both ways 100%, I think. And men just get used to hunting, and that's their only gear, and then if they're not doing the internal work, they don't know what the hell's going on. So so just maybe really touch on this, but because you're an expert, I would say, in the masculine feminine, when you meet women that are very clearly, and maybe not even as a dating situation, but very clearly in their masculine, because
I'm
I
not.
even see it too. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm chomping at the bit. Some women I will say, can I be real with you? And they'll
Yeah.
say yes. And they'll say, you're super and you're masculine. And let me tell you what that looks like. But
Mhm.
do you ever see women where you're like, whoa, holy shit? Or yeah,
I've even
tell them what it looks like to you.
I've gone on dates with them, and for lack of better terms, there's just no pull. There's no chemistry. There's no mystery.
Right.
Um, it, there's no spark, right? It looks like we're just friends having a conversation. And even though they were absolutely beautiful, if they would have made an advance in terms of like, just like going there in terms of sexual or anything, I mean, would I do it? Yeah, probably. Would it be? But I know in my head we were not compatible, because that energy, like I want to penetrate a woman with my essence, and if
Hmm.
I don't get that feel, she's not in her feminine.
Right.
That's just the truth. So there's a book called Dear Lover by David Dieta. Every woman that's listening to this right now should read that book. If you want to get into your feminine, that's the fucking way to do it. Um, it's a divinely written. But yeah, like I've also gone on dates where I'm just like, holy shit, the level of polarity, and like I'm just like, this is wild. I didn't even know this level of feminine like existed. Like
Yeah.
and what is she doing? She's very open. She's letting me lead. She's providing space for me to initiate, and she's flirting, but in a very like not boosting my ego, but she's like, oh my God, like you're so amazing in these things, right? And like, I love this about you. That, especially for the masculine, guys
Mm-hmm.
don't get that. There's even a meme about on the internet somewhere that's like girls, and it like she's on this cartoon girl, and she's on her phone, and it's like all of these Instagram notifications and all this stuff of like, hey, beautiful, da da da. She's like sitting there rolling her eyes, and then it's like boys, and it's this one like it's this one little letter, and he's like this, and he's like crying because you got this one letter, and it's like a little compliment from 5 years ago. but it's sadly true, because
Right.
women are scared to pump up a guy's ego. You're not going to do that. It's everything's intention. If you come at it with the intention of you showing somebody love, like people love when they are appreciated. So show that appreciation.
Yeah. And it's funny because 2020 dating outside of the
Right.
COVID, whatever, but dating now is, there's this whole movement around, he doesn't need to open the door for me. I don't need him to pay for me. I don't need a man. I don't need all this shit. Right. And like, I have daughters, and I've taught them that they don't need a man. And now I'm unteaching them because I had it wrong, because I didn't fucking know what I was doing. Right. I grew up on the 80s sitcoms where you didn't need a man.
Right.
But now it's like, it's beautiful. Like when I let my guard down and I just let him be around me, and I'm not pushing. Yeah. Like, and just tell him, honey, that's beautiful. Thank you for doing that. It's the smallest things, because, and I say this all the time, Tony talks about it, David talks about, like, you just want to be our hero, and we make it fucking impossible. And so now my mission truly is to teach women how to let that happen again, because that's where harmony lives. Like I said, I feel like it's so squishy, and like, just to be calm and like in this body and in this heart, and not always be like, what am I, da, da, da. And it saddens me really, because so many young women, especially, right, like 20s and 30s, are like, there's no good men left. No guys can handle me. Everyone thinks and it's like, honey, you just need to chill the fuck out and get into your heart and watch what happens. Like, this is how we are built. Men and women are built this way, and we fight it. And I'm excited by the fact, like, just having this podcast and talking, so many men on this show talk exactly like you. And I'm like, thank you. Because I can't do it. I can help the girls, and you guys can help the men. And together we're going to have harmony again. I mean, I think that's what it's all about for me. But so what's next for you? What's the next 6 months look like for you in your,
Things are moving fast. So my nonprofit's going to be kicking ass and taking names at that point, and helping a lot of people. So I'm really excited for that to be kicking off. In terms of my space, I don't know where I'm going to be living. So I literally could just up and move tomorrow. That's how I live my life. I'm at moment to moment presence. So don't know where I'm going to be in terms of feeling it out. Like, I've been wanting to go to Australia or New Zealand, but
nice.
We'll see. Yeah. And then in terms of like what I'm going to be working on, I'll probably 6 months from now, that'll be like beginning of next year. Right. So I'll be doing a lot more videos, a lot more video content. I very recently like found out that I had this limiting belief that nobody wants what I have to say. And now I've ripped that shit open, and now I'm like, here's everything. So a lot more videos, a lot better content, a lot more time on my content. Right before this recording, I'm actually making a 73-hour challenge. It's a 3-day water fast with a 3-day dopamine fast that I did myself like a week ago. That completely changed my life. Absolutely changed my fucking life. And so I'm creating like a free course to go through for other people to do that, even though it is tough, hard. It's kind of like, working through your shit and looking at the stuff that you've been avoiding and like designing your life emotionally. So I'll be talking a lot more about emotional intelligence. And by that point too, I'll probably have created a men's course, because that's also something that's in the works right now. So
amazing. I can tell you too, like, if you're listening and not watching Kevin, like your energy is completely different. Like
then when
like you were like this, like a little, like just go, 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 like a chihuahua even. And I was like, holy fuck, this kid, he's got so much depth. Like, look at him go. But like, there's this sense of peace and maturity about you now, even in the last year. That's really interesting and a testament to doing the work on yourself, right? Like, you know, you're still energy and all that stuff, but like, there's this calmness that's just sat on you now. That's different, which is palpable and noticeable. So well done. I mean, you've done what you wanted to do.
I
And
received that. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you after they hear this amazing podcast?
To wrap it all up from the very beginning, you mentioned my website. So heartguy.com is where
Awesome.
you can all the things. Heart Guy on Instagram, and Facebook is Kevin Crenshaw. YouTube is Kevin Crenshaw.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it was amazing talking to you. I'm happy to see your face. I can't wait to see. Are you going to crew any more events, do you think, in the next while?
Yeah,
Are you taking a break?
Not if they're digital, but if they're in person, yeah, I will.
I just crewed the virtual. It was.
I was attending. It was dope.
I was surprised. Like, crewing was as tiring, I can tell you, as it is in person. I don't know how. I think because there was way more energy. Like, I'm an empath. So the empath in me was like, okay, you need to get up out of this computer for 10 minutes because people are keyboard warriors, right? It's a little bit different.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
but it was amazing. It was a really good experience. But cool. All right. Well, until I see you next time, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm sending you so much love. And hopefully I'll see you soon in the not too distant future.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
All right. Yep. Bye.